on the ground, who contested the election, who observed the election here in Pakistan, knew that the election had been completely subverted. The will of the people of Pakistan had been completely subverted, and a fake system had been created on the basis of rigged results. Now, that fact has been affirmed by this report that I have in my hands here. This is the report compiled by the Commonwealth Observer Group that visited Pakistan during and soon after the election of February 2024. Now, we will make some comments about the delay in its publication. This report has still not been officially published, though it has been leaked, and the Commonwealth Secretariat has accepted the validity of this report. All they've said is that they will be releasing it in a few days' time, along with some other documents. So there is no dispute as regards the veracity, the correctness of this report. This is the report of the observer group set up by the Commonwealth. Now, this report has an executive summary at the outset, about 4 or 5 pages. I would urge everyone, each one of you, to please read those 5 pages. They present in a crux the assault that was carried out on the election of the 8th of February 2024. So, for instance, here in the executive summary, they describe the legal environment in the days and weeks leading up to the election. You will all recall that the PTI was denied its election symbol, the bat, which had been PTI's election symbol for decades. That was taken away on the last day, the 13th of January 2024, which was the last day for the issuance of election symbols. And in a country like Pakistan with low literacy, taking away the election symbol of a party is to, in effect, negate the existence of that party. And that is exactly what was done on the last day for the issuance of election symbols. This report duly notes that. This report also duly notes the fact that before the 8th of February 2024, the polling day, Mr. Imran Khan was awarded, through ludicrous judicial proceedings that lasted 14 hours a day from 9 a.m. in the morning till 1 a.m. the next day in the night. So normally, in a fair election, the aggregate vote count displayed by the Form 45 should be equal to the number of ballot papers used at a particular polling station. There can be a slight discrepancy of 1 or 2, 3 votes that got, for some reason, rejected, or ballot papers that got spoiled. But the two numbers should be very close together, if not identical. So this report points out that in a very large number of constituencies, there is clear discrepancy between the Form 45 aggregate of the total number of votes polled and what the Form 46 for the same polling station is saying as regards the number of ballot papers used up at that polling station. Now, this gives it all away. This tells you that the Form 45 was fraudulently manufactured, fabricated, after polling had actually happened. So during polling, the presiding officer kept a record, kept a count of the number of ballot papers handed out, used at that polling station. That count is there in the Form 46. But when you look at the final rigged result contained in the Form 45, the two don't match. And this hasn't happened for 1 or 2 constituencies. This has happened for close to 100 constituencies. They move on to the next major mode of attack on the election. They note that in a very large number of constituencies, there are polling stations where the number of votes said to have been polled for the National Assembly is significantly higher than the number of votes polled at the same polling station for the Provincial Assembly. Now, you all know when you walk into a polling station, every voter is handed 2 ballot papers. Each polling station serves as a polling station both for the National Assembly and for the Regional Provincial Assembly. So every voter is handed 2 ballot papers, one for the National Assembly and one for the Provincial Assembly. And invariably, everywhere, the voter will cast both the votes. So when you look at polling stations in general, you discover, and they've noted this, that the number of votes polled at a particular polling station for the National Assembly is identical to the number of votes polled at that polling station for the provincial assembly. Is a government without the mandate of the people. The parliament that has come into existence is a parliament that does not represent people. And the first law that this fraudulently elected parliament enacted was an amendment to the Election Act of 2017. And what was that amendment? On the 8th of February 2024, the Election Act 2017 said that after the election, all election disputes, like the ones that are now staring at us, would be decided by serving High Court judges acting as election tribunals. Now, the first law that this assembly created as a result of this rigging passes is to say that the election tribunals will consist not just of serving High Court judges, but also such retired judges as the Election Commission may in its discretion appoint. This is the amendment immediately made, and the clear intent was to obstruct the path to justice, to obstruct the expose or the exposition of the fraud that had taken place. And what the Election Commission then proceeded to do was it appointed persons who were PCO judges. You know, under General Musharraf's emergency in 2007, certain people were appointed judges and they were asked to take an oath under the then provisional constitutional order, which said that these judges would remain faithful to the person of Pervez Musharraf. Now, this provisional constitution order was subsequently declared void and a nullity by the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and these persons who had taken oath under the PCO to become judges were declared to never have been judges. The judgment of 2009 of the Supreme Court of Pakistan says that these persons who took oath under the PCO shall not be considered for any purpose whatsoever to have been judges of the High Court. They will not be allowed to use the word justice retired with their names because they took oath under an illegal instrument, again, under an instrument that constituted a subversion of the Constitution. So what the Election Commission has done is it has chosen those very people to become election tribunals. And since then, since 2024, a very large number of election petitions were filed by PTI candidates who had been defrauded. Those petitions have either not progressed, particularly in the province of Punjab, but also in Karachi, where the record shows PTI won 20 out of 21 National Assembly seats in Karachi. And this report points out that one of the seats taken. Now, what has happened in about 100 constituencies here is as follows. That within the constituency, in each constituency for the National Assembly, there are roughly 430, 440 polling stations. These are large constituencies. So in these constituencies, they've noticed that out of, let us say, the 436 polling stations, the number of votes polled for the National Assembly and the number of votes polled for the Provincial Assembly are identical at 300 polling stations. But then you have 136 polling stations where the number of votes polled for the National Assembly display a turnout at that polling station of 90% or above, 95%. But at the same polling station, the turnout for the Provincial Assembly is 39%, 38%. Now, this is absurd. So, for 300 polling stations in the same constituency, the turnout for the National Assembly and the turnout for the Provincial Assembly is identical. But for 136 polling stations, the turnout for the National Assembly is 95% and the turnout for the Provincial Assembly is 39%. That is the kind of discrepancy. You just need to look at these results and you can tell immediately that these 100 constituencies were attacked. Fake votes were recorded for the National Assembly where the intent was to deprive the PTI of its overwhelming landslide, 2/3 majority in the National Assembly. You see this ridiculous record. So the Commonwealth report has brought this out very well. And this is now there for anybody to go and verify with the record posted by the Election Commission at its website. This completely denudes this election of any legitimacy, any credibility. The government that has been created since then away from the PTI and given to the Jamaat-e-Islami, Hafiz Naeem-ur-Rahman. On that seat, Hafiz Naeem-ur-Rahman conceded that this was a rigged election and he had in fact not won that election, and he refused to take oath for the National Assembly even though the Election Commission had declared him a returned candidate. So what the Commonwealth report is pointing out is that the fraud was so obvious and pervasive that nobody really could have gone along with it in good conscience. And people with the slightest level of good conscience, like Hafiz Naeem of the Jamaat-e-Islami, refused to accept this election even though the rigged result was in his favor. So this has all come out in this report. Now, the question that arises with respect to this report and with respect to the conduct of the Commonwealth is the suppression of this report. We have now documents available, and this report testifies to the fact that it was completed, signed by each one of the 15 members of the election observation group set up by the Commonwealth on the 20th of November 2024. And it was handed over to the Commonwealth Secretariat. Why was this report not published there and then? Even the November date was a delayed date. Normally, Commonwealth election observation reports are created and published within 3 to 4 months. I'll give you some data. I'll give you data in a moment. So here, the election happened in February of 2024. The report was compiled in November, was completed in November of 2024. And they say they handed it over to the government. Why was this report only handed over to the fraudulently elected government? It is the responsibility, the duty of the Commonwealth to publish this report for all to examine. So they sat on this report and they're still sitting on this report. This has been leaked and they have now been forced to accept that this is indeed the report that the Commonwealth Election Group had prepared. So we raised that question, and I was noticing today in the UK press, this question has been raised. The Daily Telegraph today has run a story on this. This is a scandal in its own right. The Commonwealth sitting on a report that discloses such pervasive election rigging that completely denudes the authority, the legitimacy of Parliament and of government in Pakistan. And yet, despite this report having been completed, the Commonwealth has till now not officially released this report. So we ask why. Now, the data that I've been able to pull out somewhat quickly today, and since yesterday, reveals that there was an election report prepared by a Commonwealth observation group with respect to the elections in Trinidad and Tobago on the 28th of April 2025. That report was, the final report was published within 4 months. So the election took place on the 28th of April 2025. The report was published within 4 months. Similarly, there was a presidential election in Sri Lanka on the 21st of September 2024. That report was published within 2 months. Then there was a general election in Ghana on the 7th of December 2024. That report was published by the Commonwealth within 3 months. So the question then arises, why was this report treated in an unprecedented manner? This has never happened in the 70-year history of the Commonwealth, that an election observation group consisting of independent individuals of very high repute and standing should be allowed to gather dust for now nearly 2 years, in fact, more than 2 years. So this raises suspicion, this raises questions, and we hope the Commonwealth Institute will make amends, will review its conduct, and will come out and apologize to the Commonwealth, to the citizens of the entire Commonwealth, and to the citizens of Pakistan for sitting on this report that is of such vital importance. And we call upon the European Union, the EU, to also release the report that they have prepared. So there is a report prepared by the EU which has also been submitted to the government of Pakistan. Why are these reports being held from the people of Pakistan? We call upon the so-called government of Pakistan to release these reports as well. This is the right of the people of Pakistan to know what happened, what was done to their mandate. Article 19A of the Constitution of Pakistan makes information a fundamental right of every Pakistani. This is vital information. 13 जनवरी 2024 को, जो कि आखिरी दिन था इंतखाबी निशान देने का, उस दिन रात 11:30 बजे सुप्रीम कोर्ट कहती है पीटीआई को इंतखाबी निशान नहीं मिलेगा, और पीटीआई के तमाम उम्मीदवारों को आजाद उम्मीदवार करार दिया गया। मकसद यही था कि ये आजाद मुंतखब होकर आए और इनको फिर हॉर्स ट्रेडिंग की नजर किया जाए, इनको तोड़ा जाए, इनको दीगर पार्टियों में शामिल किया जाए। पर आफरीन है कि पीटीआई के वो अरकान जिनको जीतने दिया गया 93 और जिनको आजाद कहा गया, उनमें से कोई भी नहीं टूटा। शायद कोई एक आध बदकिस्मत हो जो टूटा हो, बाकी सब वफादार रहे पाकिस्तान की अवाम के उस वोट के जो उन्होंने लिया था इमरान खान के नाम पे और पीटीआई के नाम पे। तो ये तमाम वाकयात ये रिपोर्ट दर्ज करती है। इलेक्शन सिंबल का छीने जाना, इमरान खान साहब को 8 फरवरी से पहले एक हफ्ते के अंदर 3 मुकदमात में सजाएं देना, अडयाला जेल में अदालत लगाकर सुबह 9 बजे से रात 12-1 बजे तक की अदालत चलती थी। खुद मैं उसमें पेश हुआ, इद्दत वाले मुकदमे में और दीगर मुकदमात में। सारा दिन हम वहां खड़े रहते थे, 14-14 घंटे वहां हमने बहस की अपनी टांगों पर, और मकसद सिर्फ यही था कि 8 फरवरी से पहले खान साहब को सजाएं दी जाए। मकसद ये था और गुमान ये था कि ऐसा होने से पाकिस्तान की अवाम दिल बर्दाश्ता हो जाएगी, शायद लोग घरों से नहीं निकलेंगे वोट डालने के लिए, लेकिन ऐसा ना हुआ। 8 फरवरी को पाकिस्तानी कौम ने एक ऐसा जवाब दिया, ऐसा जमहूरी जवाब दिया जो अब तारीख का हिस्सा है और एक तारीख साज जवाब है। पाकिस्तानी कौम बाहर निकली और इतने बड़े नंबरों में पीटीआई के हिमायत याफ्ता पीटीआई के कैंडिडेट्स को, उम्मीदवारों को वोट डाले कि मंसूबा साज अपने मंसूबों के साथ बैठे रह गए, और फिर उनको उस रात वो करना पड़ा जिसकी गवाही अब ये रिपोर्ट देती है। 100 के करीब हलकों में फॉर्म 45 और फॉर्म 46 पे हमला होता है। फॉर्म 45 क्या है अब तक सब आप जानते हैं। फॉर्म 45 वो दस्तावेज है जिसमें एक हलके में जो पोलिंग स्टेशन हैं, हर पोलिंग स्टेशन पे मुख्तलिफ उम्मीदवारों की जो वोट हैं वो दर्ज किए जाते हैं। तो अगर एक कौमी असेंबली के हलके में 436 पोलिंग स्टेशन है तो उस हलके के 436 फॉर्म 45 होंगे। हर फॉर्म 45 पे जितने भी उम्मीदवार हैं उनके वोट दर्ज किए जाएंगे। इसी तरह एक फॉर्म होता है जिसको कहते हैं फॉर्म 46, वो हर पोलिंग स्टेशन पे जो बैलेट पेपर इस्तेमाल हुए उनका रिकॉर्ड रखता है कि इस पोलिंग स्टेशन पे कितने बैलेट पेपर इस्तेमाल हुए। आम हालात में जो फॉर्म 45 में वोट दर्ज किए गए हैं, मिसाल के तौर पे 10 उम्मीदवार थे एक पोलिंग स्टेशन पे, उन 10 उम्मीदवारों के वोट आप फर्दन लेकर जब उनको जमा करते हैं, किसी को 100 वोट पड़े, किसी को 150 पड़े, किसी को 10 पड़े, किसी को 25 पड़े, तो नीचे एक मजमूई हिंसा आता है। तो वो जो मजमूई हिंसा है उस हिंसे को बराबर होना चाहिए उस हिंसे के जो फॉर्म 46 में दिया गया है कि इस पोलिंग स्टेशन पे इतने बैलेट पेपर इस्तेमाल हुए। तो ये रिपोर्ट ये बता रही है कि एक बहुत बड़ी तादाद में कंस्टिट्यूएंसीज, हल्के ऐसे हैं जहां फॉर्म 45 और फॉर्म 46 मुताबिकत नहीं रखते। क्योंकि हुआ यही ना, किसी को अगर 10 वोट मिले थे तो उन 10 वोटों को 900 बना दिया गया ना, एक को 9 बनाया गया और एक 100 के लिए एक सिफर इजाफा कर दिया गया। तो जब आप 10 वोट को 900 वोट बनाएंगे तो क्या होगा, जो आपका उसका जो एग्रीगेट है, जो तमाम उस पोलिंग स्टेशन के वोटों की कुल तादाद है, उसमें 890 वोटों का इजाफा होना चाहिए। तो बहुत से पोलिंग स्टेशन ऐसे हैं कि नीचे इजाफा करना भूल गए, ऊपर तो 10 को 900 कर दिया, लेकिन नीचे भी तो 890 वोट बढ़ाने थे, वो नहीं बढ़ाए। इसी तरह फॉर्म 46 में भी 890 वोट आपको बढ़ाने थे। इस फ्रॉड को उसके साथ मुताबिक अच्छा, अब ये तमाम बातें, एक गुजारिश और कर दूं, दूसरी चीज जो इस सफा 94 पे आती है वो ये है कि बहुत बड़ी तादाद में हल्के ऐसे हैं कि वहां पोलिंग स्टेशंस पे जो कौमी असेंबली के वोट पड़े वो नजर आता है कि 95% है, जबकि उन्हीं पोलिंग स्टेशंस पे सूबाई असेंबली का जो वोट है वो 40% जी उससे कम है। जी, इसकी अहमियत इन बातों की ये है कि अब एक बैनुल अक़वामी इदारे ने इस बात को तहरीर कर दिया है। जो चीज हमारे दिलों में थी, हम जानते थे, वो यहाँ आ गई है। देखिए, एक बात मैं और कहूंगा कि इस इलेक्शन के बाद जो इस असम्बली ने जो इस रिगिंग के नतीजे में कायम हुई, पहला काम ये किया, लोग हमसे पूछते हैं आपने मुकदमे क्यों नहीं अपने लड़े, तो उसका जवाब ये है कि उन्होंने आते ही इलेक्शन एक्ट में तरमीम की। इलेक्शन एक्ट 8 फरवरी 2024 को ये था कि हाई कोर्ट के हाजिर सर्विस जज मुकदमे सुनेंगे। इन्होंने तरमीम करके ये कहा कि इलेक्शन कमीशन अपनी सवाबदीद में रिटायर्ड जजों को मुकर्रर करेगा, और फिर इलेक्शन कमीशन ने चुन चुन कर उन लोगों को जज मुकर्रर किया इलेक्शन पिटिशन सुनने के लिए जो पीसीओ के जज थे, जिनको जज कहा ही नहीं जा सकता, और उनके पास ये मुकदमे पड़े हुए हैं, या वो उनको तकनीकी बुनियादों पर खारिज कर देते हैं या सुनते ही नहीं। कोई एक भी मुकदमा पंजाब में ऐसा नहीं है जो हकायक की बुनियाद पर जिसका फैसला हुआ। अब सवाल जो उठता है, एक बड़ा सवाल जो उठता है, वो कॉमनवेल्थ के हवाले से उठता है कि जो दौलत मुश्तरका है, इसका एक मैंडेट है, इसका एक चार्टर है, उसमें ये दौलत मुश्तरका में शामिल ममालिक में जब इलेक्शन होते हैं तो वहाँ एक ऑब्जर्वर ग्रुप, यानी कि एक मुबस्सरीन का ग्रुप जो है ये भेजते हैं, और ये मुबस्सरीन वो लोग होते हैं जो रिटायर्ड उनके सुप्रीम कोर्ट, हाउस ऑफ लॉर्ड्स के जज होते हैं, या दीगर जो दौलत मुश्तरका के ममालिक हैं वहाँ के बहुत बड़े ओहदे रखने वाले लोग होते हैं, कोई साबिक वजीर आजम होता है, तो इस पाए के लोगों को मुबस्सर बनाकर भेजा जाता है ताकि उनकी जो गैर जानिबदारी है उस पर किसी को शक ना हो। अब इस मुबस्सर ग्रुप ने जो पाकिस्तान आया था, अपनी रिपोर्ट 8 फरवरी 2024 के इलेक्शन के हवाले से 20 नवंबर 2024 को मुरतब कर ली थी हतमी रिपोर्ट, और वो कॉमनवेल्थ दौलत मुश्तरका के सेक्रेटेरिएट को दे दी थी। तो सवाल ये उठता है कि इस रिपोर्ट को क्यों छुपाया गया। अब भी ये रिपोर्ट लीक हुई है, अब भी इस रिपोर्ट को दौलत मुश्तरका ने बाकायदा तौर पर शाया नहीं किया, लेकिन इतना जरूर हुआ है कि इस लीक होने के बाद दौलत मुश्तरका ने मान लिया है कि उन्हीं की रिपोर्ट है, उन्होंने इसको झुटलाया नहीं है।
काफी हो गया। अब ये बता दें,
निशान है
दुनिया में ऐसा है, अब किससे
हम यही करेंगे ना कि अपना मुकदमा अवाम की अदालत में हम पेश करते रहेंगे। ये जो मेरे सामने एक और दस्तावेज है, उसमें मैंने जैसा कि अंग्रेजी में अर्ज किया, ट्रिनिडाद टोबैगो, श्रीलंका, घाना, इन सब मुल्कों में जो 2024-25 में इलेक्शन हुए हैं, और इन सब मुल्कों में दौलत मुश्तरका ने अपनी रिपोर्ट 3 या 4 माह में शाया कर दी। अब ये जो गुफ्तगू आपके जरिए पाकिस्तानी अवाम और पूरी दुनिया तक पहुंच रही है, इस गुफ्तगू का मकसद ही ये है कि हकीकत को जाहिर किया जाए, जो हकीकत हम जानते थे और जिसको अब पूरी दुनिया ने तस्लीम कर लिया है, उस हकीकत का तज़किरा किया जाए। और ये पाकिस्तानी कौम ने फैसला करना है कि क्या उन्होंने अपने आप को भेड़ बकरी की तरह रखना है। जिन लोगों ने हमला किया इस इलेक्शन पे, उनके नजदीक तो ये लोग भेड़ बकरियां हैं, उनके वोट की, उनकी आवाज की, उनकी सोच की कोई वक़्त नहीं है। तो ये एक मुकदमा है जिसका फैसला तारीख करती है, जिसका फैसला बिलाखिर हर कौम करती है। हमारी कौम कोई किसी और कौम से नहीं है। देखें, उमर अयूब साहब, शिबली फराज साहब हमारे लीडर ऑफ द ऑपोजिशन हैं कौमी असम्बली में और सेनेट में, जो उनको नाहक सजाएं दी गई हैं, हम उन सजाओं को तस्लीम नहीं करते। हम समझते हैं कि उनकी नशस्तें आज भी बहाल हैं, एक कानूनी अमल चल रहा है। अगर उस कानूनी अमल के नतीजे में उनको कोई रिलीफ मिलती है तो वो वापस आएंगे।